ever since they tapped into the video game console industry in 1994 with the PlayStation 1, Sony has constantly tried to create their version of a Mario game. And by doing so, they've created some pretty great series. Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Spyro, Ratchet and Clank. They're all amazing series in their own rights, but when it came to discussing who was the king of 3D platformers, Mario was always the name that would come up first. I mean, you have Super Mario 64, the game that practically invented the genre. Super Mario Galaxy, a beautiful, more linear take on the Mario formula, with a breathtaking OST and cool new gravity gimmick. And Super Mario Odyssey, a game with probably the best movement of any platformer ever, and a variety of amazing kingdoms to explore. But as Sony started to focus more on bigger budget, almost movie-like games with the PS3 and PS4, with series like Uncharted and The Last of Us, their 3D platformer attempts slowed down quite a bit. I mean, you still had games like, Knack, but it really seemed like they were fully giving up on their attempts at a flagship 3D platformer that would be as popular as Mario. That was until the PS5. You see, if you got a PS5 on launch day back in 2020, you didn't have that many options for games to buy. However, you did have a pack-in title, Astro's Playroom. This game is a phenomenal little tech demo for the PS5, showing off its insane graphical capabilities, cool controller gimmicks, and new SSD. But in the end, that's all it was, a cool tech demo that most people forgot about as the years went on. However, out of nowhere in a state of play back in May, Astro Bot was announced. A fully realized take on that initial PS5 tech demo that immediately grabbed everyone's attention. I mean, this finally looked like a 3D platformer that could rival Mario. And after an only 3-month wait between announcement and release, Astro Bot released to critical acclaim, scoring a 94 on Metacritic, making it one of the highest rated platformers of all time. And in this video, I want to take a deep dive into this game, and see what not only makes it a phenomenal game in its own right, but also a spiritual successor to the Super Mario Galaxy games. And probably the closest thing we'll ever get to a Super Mario Galaxy 3. So, without further ado, my name is Mariomikester, and today we're talking about Astro Bot. Released worldwide on September 6, 2024, Astro Bot is a very clear sequel to Astro's Playroom. But the history of this series and its development team, Team Asobi, actually date all the way back to 2013, when The Playroom was released for the PS4. Similar to Astro's Playroom for the PS5, The Playroom was a free short demo that was released alongside the PS4 in November of 2013. However, this game was almost solely based around the PS4 camera accessory, meant to show off what it and the PS4's controller could do. This was Team Asobi's first game, and even from the beginning you could see the iconic cute bots that the team is known for. But it wasn't until 3 years later that we would see the introduction of Astro Bot, the mascot of the series, in The Playroom VR. The Playroom VR was, just again, another free demo, this time meant to show off what the PSVR could do in a batch of 6 minigames. Most of these minigames were pretty forgettable, but one of them, Robots Rescue, really stood out to just about everyone who played the game. This is the one that featured Astro Bot, and unlike all the other minigames here, had you platforming around an environment trying to rescue missing bots. Feedback on this one minigame was so great that it eventually got its own entire game on the PSVR in 2018, called Astro Bot Rescue Mission. This game is basically an early VR version of what would eventually be Astro Bot on the PS5, featuring so many of the same enemies, level structure, and overall gameplay loop. Looking at this game now, it's so cool to see a lot of the enemies and stuff we thought were completely new in Astro's Playroom and Astro Bot actually originate here. And seeing how they evolved and changed in little ways is so interesting to me. And through the history of Team Asobi's games, you can really see them find their footing and start to understand what works and what doesn't. Returning back to the PS5 though, after the success of both Astro Bot Rescue Mission and especially Astro's Playroom, Team Asobi not only became an internal development studio at PlayStation, granting them a lot more funding and developers, but were also able to start working on their biggest Astro game yet, Astro Bot. Development for this game started almost immediately after the release and success of Astro's Playroom. With the choice of the game's name simply being Astro Bot, signifying a new beginning for the series. Originally, the game was intended to have an open world structure. However, very quickly the team decided against this, as they realized they could have a lot more control over the game's variety and gimmicks if they focused on a more level-based structure instead. Ultimately, I think going for the level-based structure was the smarter decision here, as it again allows for more variety, but also because remnants of that initial open world idea can be seen in some of the game's levels. And I think they work here much better as occasional stages and not the entire game. And after a development period of just over 3.5 years, Astro Bot was finally revealed to the public on May 30th, 2024. Surprising, but also exciting tons of people. Upon starting the game for the first time and creating a save file, you're greeted to this game's goofy opening. Astro and his friends are flying through space in their sentient PS5 spaceship, absolutely jamming out, until this evil alien in a UFO grabs the ship, ripping it open and stealing their CPU chip. And before anyone can do anything about it, blasts off into space, with the explosion from the blast causing the already damaged ship to break apart, expelling all the bots and ship parts off into outer space, before finally spiraling out of control and crash landing on this nearby desert planet, with the only things landing near it being Astro Bot, his suspiciously PS5 controller-shaped vehicle, the Dual Speeder, and a satellite. And after gaining control of Astro Bot in this tutorial area, you're not only given a nice space to test out the controls and understand how Astro plays, but you can already see just how many tiny details there are that brings this game to life. If you approach the crash-landed PS5 ship, where most games would just have it be a solid object that would make a sound if you hit it, here you can actually interact with each tiny part of the ship. You can hit these cylinders to make them spin in whatever direction you hit them, you can hear this rubbery bouncy sound if you hit these little notches, and you can even hear a springy metallic sound when you hit these heat sinks. Again, these are such tiny details 90% of people won't notice, but the fact that they include something like this in the first place just shows how passionate the team behind this game are. And this isn't the last time you'll see little details like this, as the game is full of them. Moving on, after making your way up to the crashed satellite and hitting it, you're able to blast off into space on the Dual Speeder, and make your way to the first of the 5 main worlds in this game, Gorilla Nebula. Heading into the first stage, Sky Garden, this level is an amazing introduction to what the game is. It's very rare that a game captivates me as much as Astro Bot did in its first stage, let alone the first stage of a game in a series I had never played before, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to just how strong of an introduction this stage is. This level looks absolutely stunning, and shows just how great the PS5 can do cartoony art styles, as most PS5 games, especially first-party ones, go for hyper-realistic graphics. I love the colorful vibes here, and the fun little things you can do like swing around on this cute duck rope, slide down this water slide with all the colorful balls, and jump off this diving board into the pool left me with a huge smile on my face the entire time I was playing through this level. This stage also shows off one of the many power-ups Astro can use in this game, with you being introduced to the Octa Balloon power-up, which inflates Astro into a balloon and allows you to float up into the air for a short amount of time, before deflating back down to normal size. Probably the most fun part of this stage, other than the platforming itself though, is learning about the 2 main collectibles of this game scattered around every level: the bots and the puzzle pieces. The bots and puzzle pieces not only incentivize players to explore around, and not just, rush to the end of the stage, but the secrets and challenges you have to find and complete to get some of them can be a ton of fun. For example, to get the second puzzle piece that seemingly looks unreachable, you can either go unlock and collect the Octoballoon power-up and float up to it, or you can figure out that the lasers Astro shoots from his feet in order to float up in the air for a short period of time can actually cut these logs up, in very precise pieces too, in order to reveal a hidden fuse you can pull that will create a jet stream of water that will let you reach the puzzle piece. Overall, this first level does a stellar job at showing the player what to expect from this game. And yes, I also said like Sky Garden from Mario Kart when I first saw the name of this stage. Moving away from the first level though, one thing you'll notice right away when playing this game is the insane amount of love this game pays to not only PlayStation, but gaming in general. Obviously the PlayStation love is all over this game. From the ship, to the dual speeder, to even the save files literally being represented by PS1 memory cards. And I imagine this was done as this game was released in celebration of the 30th anniversary of PlayStation, but all the other references to non-first party Sony games are just as cool. The way Astro Bot pays homage to these games is through the various special bots you collect along your journey. Unlike the normal regular bots you find scattered around which don't have anything special about them, the aptly named special bots are fitted in costumes that reference characters from all over PlayStation's history. You have the ones you'd expect like Crash Bandicoot, Ratchet, and Kratos, but you also have ones like Knack? What the hell is he doing here? And even characters from non-first party Sony games like Connor from Detroit Become Human, and Snake from Metal Gear Solid. These characters all have unique names too, like Connor being called Deviant Hunter, and Ratchet being called Tooled Up Mechanic. These names are so clever, because only people who are fans of these series, or at least have some knowledge of these characters, will know who they are. I won't lie, after I saw some of the more obscure characters they were putting here, I was half expecting to see Freddy Fazbear appear under the name of Singing Bear or something. You can also unlock items in the Gacha machine in the hub world that add more interaction to these characters, and just make these references all the more cooler. Enough about character references though. Easily the best part of this game, and the reason it feels so much like a spiritual successor to the Super Mario Galaxy games, is the levels themselves. Now, there are over 70 plus stages in this game, so I obviously won't be able to cover them all, but I do want to highlight some of my favorites. Starting off with Downsize Surprise. This level has got to be one of the absolute coolest in the game. It starts off with you being given the mouse power-up, before suddenly you're trapped in a cage with no way out. But by activating the power-up by pressing one of the triggers, you shrink down to a microscopic size where even the blades of grass are bigger than you. This power-up is so cool because of how seamless the transition is from normal size to tiny size, and vice versa. The way the world effortlessly scales around you in the blink of an eye always has me in awe, and really is Team Asobi taking advantage of the PS5's hardware, as I imagine programming this and getting it to run smoothly is probably something that could only work on a console like the PS5. The game I was immediately reminded of as soon as I used this power-up is The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. The whole gimmick of that game is that you can shrink down at these logs to a super tiny size just like this. However, obviously there's a whole cutscene around it, and it's not nearly as instant as this. But the different things you can do here, like shrink down and go in between these grates, grind across these clotheslines, and even explore this giant bedroom, are so cool. And throughout the rest of the time I played this game, I was hoping to see another level take advantage of this power-up, but sadly, this is the only one. Regardless of that, this is a genius level that I think stuck out to just about everyone. Another level I really enjoyed that I think stuck out as well is Trunk of Funk. This stage starts off fairly normal with you traversing around this pretty open area, kind of just figuring out what to do. There's this cute cow you can hang out with and some bots to find. But the real level starts when you pull this fuse to reveal a water gun you can shoot at this thirsty sprout. And after spraying this sprout with enough water, it will grow into this giant singing tree, who literally tells you to "Hey, whatever you say, giant groovy tree." And upon entering the tree's mouth, you unlock the Elephant Hose Nose power-up, which is basically just the cloud power-up from Super Mario Galaxy 2, and allows you to create platforms in the air. I love this level not only because of the cool singing tree and the amazing song that accompanies this level, but also because it reminded me so much of the Mario Galaxy games with this cloud power-up-like ability. It also gets even cooler later in the stage, with you being able to fill up the hose with honey which you can bounce on. The level ends with a boss fight against these 3 chickens and eggs called the Tama Trio. And the way you defeat them is by literally sucking up their insides with the hose, which is like oddly brutal when you think about it. Moving on, the last main stage I want to talk about is Slow-Mo Casino. This level is such a vibe. Here you're introduced to the Slow-Mo Vision power-up, which can, as you probably expect, slow down everything around you for a short period of time, and is also a PSVR headset that you put on and off, which is pretty funny. This power-up is a blast to mess around with. And the stage that's built around it being a casino makes it so much better. Casinos in video games are almost always a huge vibe, and Astro Bot features probably one of my favorite casino levels ever in a video game. Being able to stop time to win big on the slots, or platform quickly across these spinning roulette wheels and jump on moving darts in the air is just plain old fun. The music here also embodies everything a video game casino should feel like. It's got this upbeat but cool and show-offy vibe to it. I just love replaying this level over and over. Overall, the stages in this game are really what shows off Team Asobi's talent. The variety here is some of the best I've seen in a platformer. Just about every theme you'd expect to be covered is here, plus a bunch more that really caught me by surprise. Also, some levels have secret exits hidden in them that unlock levels in the secret sixth world, and finding these exits were a blast in my experience, as most of them are hidden in super clever locations, and very satisfying to find. Returning back to the main game stages though, the thing that makes these levels so good is that it combines good old-fashioned fun platforming with these insanely creative ideas and gimmicks that we've never really seen done before. A lot of the times you see games that take inspiration from Mario, just rehash ideas the series has done with their own characters and lackluster twists, that add virtually nothing to the table and tend to be forgotten about within a couple years. With Astro Bot, however, this game obviously takes a ton of inspiration from Mario, but does so in a way that keeps it unique. It's its own game with its own characters, own ideas, and own identity. One of the biggest things that goes into making a Mario game good is all the new ideas it introduces. Stuff we've never seen before, or something done in a way you wouldn't expect that just makes you go, wow. And that wow factor is something Astro Bot is full of. There were tons of times in my first playthrough of this game that I was just taken aback by how cool they handled something, or how awesome a new idea they introduced was. And that's probably the biggest reason this game feels like a Super Mario Galaxy 3 to me. It has that space theme, cartoony art style, level-based structure, but most importantly, unique and fun ideas that constantly keep you engaged. Just like the Super Mario Galaxy games did. Something the Mario Galaxy games didn't do though is have a fucking God of War themed level. Yes, after completing the main levels and boss of a world, you get to play a first-party Sony franchise themed level. And these stages are great. As someone who hasn't played many Sony games, I still really enjoyed these stages. Catching monkeys in the open-ended Ape Escape level, throwing Kratos' axe around and suddenly hear the music just say boy in the God of War level, and rolling around in the Loco Roco stage were super fun, despite me knowing almost nothing about these games. The one franchise-themed level I did have experience with though, was the Uncharted level. I've played and beaten almost every Uncharted game, and this level was pure joy to play through. Being able to play as a Nathan Drake-themed Astro Bot, and understanding all the subtle little references hidden about, and especially recognizing all the characters and why they were placed in certain locations, was so cool. It's also really nice to see a series like Ape Escape, which hasn't had a mainline installment in almost 2 decades, get some big representation in this game. Sony has a huge catalog of franchises that they just don't do anything with anymore, so it's really great that their legacy at least gets to be continued by this game and possible future Astro Bot games. And after completing one of these franchise-themed levels, you find one of the missing ship parts that broke off when that evil alien guy took off with the CPU. And when you collect one of these missing ship parts, they're in pretty bad shape. And with the use of motion controls and clever gimmicks, you get to fix them up. And doing so is so satisfying. Hammering in the nails in the memory and sticking in the RAM sticks, evenly sawing and inserting these discs into the SSD, trimming the vines off the CPU, scrubbing the wings clean. It's so fun, and again makes great use of the motion sensors inside the PS5 controller. And before I talk about the final boss, I want to talk about the unique bosses at the end of each of the 5 worlds, right before the franchise-themed levels I was just talking about. These bosses are without a doubt some of the most engaging boss fights in any video game I have ever played. And I am not exaggerating that. Bosses in platformers can be pretty hit or miss. Some of them take clever advantage of the game's mechanics and characters' movesets, while others are just plain old lazy. In Astro Bot's case though, each of the main boss fights here are not only unique, but take incredible advantage of the power-ups in Astro Bot's moveset. The first boss, Mighty Chewy, takes advantage of the Bulldog booster, and has you using it to blast the giant ape's eyes and destroy all of his teeth. One of the big reasons this fight, and while all of the other fights are super engaging, is because of the way they attack you. In this fight, Mighty Chewy drags giant signs and entrances that you have to react quickly to and blast through in order to survive. The next boss, Wako Taco, is a giant octopus that rapidly attacks you with his tentacles. And by using the frog power-up, you're able to punch at his hands that get stuck and eventually break his goggles, causing him to literally midway through the fight part the sea, and has you go through a mini platforming challenge mid-fight, which I love. One of the coolest things about some of these fights is that they change as you go on. For example, the third main boss fight against Lady Venomora starts off with you fighting her indoors, on a small platform, dodging her attacks and using the chicken rocket power-up to damage her. However, right when you think that the fight's over and you've defeated her, suddenly you're thrown outside and on her back while you're both going Mach speed down a hill, and you have to make your way across her body, dodging her attacks, before delivering the final blow. I remember the first time I did this fight, I literally put the controller down when I thought I had defeated her, and quickly had to pick it back up and lock back in when the outdoor phase started. The music that accompanies these fights also lends super well to how engaging they are. The theme is so loud and in your face, but in the best way possible, and always gets me super excited during these fights. Overall, Astro Bot's boss fights are incredible, and where some games would slow down and become monotonous with their boss fights, Team Asobi understands that boss fights are supposed to be fun above everything else, and do a great job at balancing difficulty and entertainment. And, after adventuring through the 5 main worlds of this game and retrieving and installing all the ship parts, you can finally take off in the mothership, and go after the evil alien who stole the CPU. This final level, Play Squadron Go, has to be one of the corniest but cutest final levels in a platformer. The whole level sees you flying on the dual speeder, and fighting your way through the final boss, Space Bully Nebulax's force of enemies. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but this literally feels like something straight out of Star Wars, and I love it. As the level progresses, you go through the history of PlayStation, with a console or accessory from each era helping you get through a zone. Everything about this, like I said, is so corny, but I can't help but smile throughout the entirety of it. And after battling your way through Space Bully's forces with the Play Squadron, you come face to face with the evil alien themselves. This final fight takes place atop the mothership, and sees Space Bully Nebulax spinning a wheel which you have to stop. And whatever the wheel lands on is the power-up you get for that phase of the fight. This concept is super cool, as it can make each rematch with Space Bully unique, as it's probably almost impossible to get the exact same wheel spins twice in a row. And, depending on what power-up you get, Space Bully will attack you differently, with you at the end of each phase finding some way to smack them in the face and flip them over, so you can break his fingers, and also one of the locks holding the CPU kid hostage. Just like the other bosses I mentioned before, this fight is super engaging, and I really enjoyed all the different power-ups you get to use throughout it. And after battling your way through the fight and unlocking the final lock, you're finally able to free the CPU kid from their prison, and fully fix the mothership. But, right as you think it's over, Space Bully comes back, not looking the best. And after getting on the dual speeder and destroying all the stuff Space Bully throws at you, You're finally able to defeat him. But as you destroy his UFO, a black hole appears. And they decide that if they're going down, Astro's going with them, bringing a super sad end to an amazing game. Nah, I'm just kidding. Astro doesn't die. You get to repair him and play through this insanely cool final credits level, and is a super fun end to one of the best 3D platformers ever made. A new Astro Bot game was the last thing I think just about everybody expected PlayStation to announce in their May State of Play. But it ended up being one of the most hype announcements of the whole show. Over the years, Sony has struggled to find their Mario, and with Astro Bot, I think they've finally found it. And I don't just mean that in the sense that the game is similar to Mario. I mean they finally found their recognizable cute mascot that everyone loves. Sure, they've had Crash Bandicoot and Sackboy, but Astro Bot is a character that seemingly came out of nowhere that has become instantly popular. And that's because Team Asobi really locked in with this game, and created one of the best platformers I have ever played. I mean, with a score of 94 on Metacritic, this game is literally beating out Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario Sunshine in terms of rating, and is almost on par with games like Super Mario Odyssey and Galaxy 1 and 2. And seeing as this is their first real attempt at a full-fledged console Astro Bot game, I can only imagine the future will be brighter than we can possibly imagine. This game is full of so many creative ideas that throughout its entire runtime will constantly have you taking a step back and just saying, wow. The amazing use of the PS5 controller's features create motion control gameplay that's actually fun. And the HD rumble of the controller will make you feel the surface you're walking on through the controller, along with the rain droplets hitting Astro's umbrella. The soundtrack here is an absolute jam, and does a great job at capturing the atmosphere of every stage. The secrets hidden in each level incentivize players to explore every nook and cranny of a stage. And the references some of the bots hold will have diehard PlayStation fans, and just video game fans in general, appreciating the inclusion of some of these characters. The bosses here are some of the most engaging in any platformer, and are so fun to go back and replay every once in a while. Astro Bot is such an amazing game that I am fully expecting to win Game of the Year this year. From a simple demo meant to show off the PS4's camera, to a potential Game of the Year that has become one of the highest rated platformers of all time, Team Asobi has shown that they are one of the most talented teams in the industry right now. And if you have a PS5 and haven't played this game, what are you doing? Go play this game right now! Because if you're a Mario fan, this is the closest thing to a Super Mario Galaxy 3 that is out there right now. This game is incredible,